The story begins in the crowded immigrant streets of New York City, where young men from southern Italy carried with them not just hunger and hope but also the codes of the old world. Among these boys was Francesco Costiglia, who later took the name Frank Costello. He was sharp, cautious, and ambitious. He quickly saw that in America, muscle was not enough to survive. Influence, charm, and strategy would always outweigh a knife in the dark. By his side in those early years was Vito Genovese, a darker soul, driven by ambition that cared little for diplomacy. Both would rise under the shadow of Charles, Lucky, Luciano, but their paths would eventually split into a rivalry that defined the American Mafia's mid-century saga. During Prohibition, the city was an ocean of opportunity. Whiskey flowed illegally through speakeasies, and Costello became the master of distribution. He preferred deals over gunfights, convincing police captains and politicians to look the other way. He spoke softly, dressed impeccably, and bought influence as though it were another commodity. Genovese, however, leaned toward blood. He was quick to eliminate threats, preferring permanent solutions. Together, under Luciano, they built an empire that smuggled liquor, ran gambling operations, and connected with mobsters from Chicago to Havana. The Castellamarese War of 1930 and 1931 shook New York to its core. Rival factions led by Joe Masseria and Salvatore Maranzano spilled blood in alleyways and restaurants. Costello and Genovese fought under Luciano's guidance, maneuvering like chess players while soldiers gunned each other down. In the end, Masseria was murdered during a card game, Maranzano met his fate in an office ambush, and Luciano reorganized the underworld with his commission. Costello was rewarded with the prestigious role of consigliere, his wisdom trusted, while Genovese became underboss, second only to Luciano himself. With Luciano imprisoned in 1936, leadership fell to Costello. He was never a man of violence, but he had the politician's instinct. He poured his energy into gambling, slot machines, casinos, horse racing. In Louisiana he struck deals with politicians to place machines in bars and bus stops, sending money north. He cultivated relationships in Tammany Hall, ensuring that laws bent in his favor. His influence was so great that people called him the Prime Minister of the underworld. He controlled not only rackets but judges and city officials. To many in New York, he seemed untouchable. Genovese, meanwhile, plotted from the shadows. When he faced a murder charge in the mid-1930s, he fled to Italy, forging alliances with Benito Mussolini's regime. There he thrived in smuggling, black market deals, and rumored assassinations. But the tides of war changed everything. After the Allied invasion, he sought to return home, carefully maneuvering his way back into New York. Witnesses against him mysteriously died, charges evaporated, and by 1946 he walked free, determined to reclaim the empire that Costello had fortified. The Kefauver hearings in 1951 were a turning point. Televised for the first time, they brought organized crime into living rooms across America. Costello was subpoenaed, and while he demanded that cameras not show his face, millions watched his nervous hands twist and tremble as senators grilled him. His refusal to answer simple questions, his walkout from the hearing, and his eventual contempt conviction chipped away at his aura of invincibility. The public saw him not as a dignified power broker but as a cornered man. For Genovese, this was a signal: the prime minister could bleed. Costello's troubles deepened with a tax evasion conviction in 1952. He served time, lost his citizenship, and grew older under the burden of constant investigations. Genovese, newly reinstated as underboss after Willie Moretti's execution, began to maneuver more openly. He whispered that Costello was weak, that leadership should belong to a man unafraid of war. In 1957, he acted. Vincent, the Chin Gigante, Genovese's loyal soldier, ambushed Costello in the lobby of his apartment building. A bullet grazed Costello's head. Bloodied but alive, he staggered upstairs, whispering to police that he had no idea who wanted him dead. Yet the message was clear: step down, or the next bullet would not miss. Costello chose survival. He retired, surrendering the family to Genovese, who promptly renamed it after himself. With power in his hands, Genovese moved aggressively. He orchestrated the murder of Albert Anastasia, the feared boss of Murder, Inc., cut down while reclining in a barber's chair. He called a historic meeting in Apalachin, New York, bringing together bosses from across America to recognize his authority. But hubris undid him. State police, tipped off to the unusual gathering of luxury cars, raided the estate. Dozens of mobsters fled into fields, ditches, and forests, only to be arrested. For the first time, the public and government saw undeniable proof of a national crime syndicate. The FBI, once hesitant, now had cause to strike. Rumors swirled that Costello himself had tipped off authorities, ensuring that Genovese's triumph became humiliation. From that moment, Genovese's reign crumbled. Federal agents, emboldened, targeted him. By 1959 he was indicted on heroin trafficking charges, convicted, and sentenced to 15 years in Atlanta Penitentiary. From prison he tried to rule, but his grip weakened. Rivals conspired, alliances shifted, and his influence drained away. In 1969 he died behind bars, bitter and defeated, a man who had reached for absolute power only to find it poisoned. Costello, meanwhile, lived on. Though retired, he remained a figure of fascination. He tended gardens, entered flowers in competitions, and kept a quiet dignity. He was occasionally seen in New York restaurants, older men nodding respectfully. His enemies left him alone, his surrender had spared him further violence. In 1973 he died peacefully, a rare fate for a man who had once ruled the underworld. Their story reflects two visions of the Mafia. Costello represented diplomacy, influence, and the blending of crime with politics. He sought stability, preferring negotiation to war. Genovese embodied violence, ambition without restraint, the belief that fear alone could secure dominance. Together they illustrate the tension that defined organized crime in mid-century America. One believed in ruling through connections, the other through blood. Both left legacies that shaped the Mafia long after their deaths. The aftermath of their rivalry rippled through history. The Apalachin debacle forced law enforcement into action, leading to the FBI's deeper pursuit of organized crime. Congressional committees, prosecutors, and eventually the RICO Act dismantled the syndicates that Costello and Genovese had built. By the late 20th century, their empires were fragments of memory. Yet in films, books, and the whispered lore of New York, their names endure. The Prime Minister and the ruthless underboss turned Don, two sides of the same coin, symbolize the rise and fall of the American Mafia. Their tale is not just about crime but about the American dream twisted into shadow. Both were immigrants' sons who sought power in a land that promised opportunity. They climbed from poverty into wealth, from anonymity into notoriety. But their methods, one through bribery and political charm, the other through bullets and intimidation, reveal the dark roads ambition can carve. For Costello, the end was a garden in peace. For Genovese, it was a prison cell. History remembers them together, bound forever as rivals who shaped the underworld's most turbulent chapter.